Thank you.
All right, letting everyone in now.
Hi, everybody. Blanche is waving. That's always nice to see. Where's your husband, Blanche? Well, we'll find out.
Changing his shoes.
Okay, that's a good excuse. I'm Bill Rudman. Everybody knows that. It's the usual suspects tonight. Welcome to one of the most unusual animated musicals ever made. And that's not an overstatement. This is the 1962 gay Purr-ee with 3 star voices. They are Judy Garland, Robert Goulet, who had just become a star, and Red Buttons, plus 2 star songwriters, Harold Arlen and Yip Harburg, who are 2 of my very favorites. This is another example of one of our specialties. We love to do what we call cult films. And given all the talent that went into creating this movie, it's definitely worth our time. It's worth our observations. We're going to see how many of you consider yourselves members of the gay Purr-ee cult. And I'm delighted that we got Bob Knoll as our co-host. He's on vacation from his very full-time teaching job at John Carroll. So let's welcome back Bob to Let's Go to the Movies. Hi, Bob.
I'm glad to be back, Bill. Glad to be back to everybody.
We're glad to have you. And one reason we have you is that we know you have a special interest in animation. So this is good casting. And I want to just jump right in and let's see where we stand with our participants and go for the survey.
Okay, the survey is, okay, let's see.
Bill, I'm gonna need to pause on the survey because I need to hop off and then come back in.
Okay, hop off and then come back.
Or Barbara can do it. I think I lost the ability to do it
Oh.
when Barbara hopped on because she's also hosting.
Oh, when Barbara hopped on, you see the trouble you caused?
Do you need me to get off?
Can you hit the polls at the bottom and see if it?
I'm not seeing polls.
Okay, then I'll hop out and then hop back in.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm right back.
Okay.
Glad we have Herb Drower back from Boston. Hi, Herb. Herb had some health-related trouble that he had to get through, but he's gotten through it, and now he's home.
I'm back.
You're back, and you saw the movie.
I sure did, yes.
And I bet you had never seen this movie, had you?
I had never seen it. I never even heard of it.
Good. Oh, good. We were successful. That's great. And we have Bridget as well, I think.
Howdy.
You know, the big question of the evening is, Arthur prepared us the last time for the fact that he could not be part of this time. What the heck are we going to do without Arthur? I wonder. Well, we'll have to find out.
Yeah, we can
Yonder, if
poll now.
you need me to jump
We can do
off.
it. No,
We
I
can
got
do
it.
it?
We can
Okay.
do
You got it?
Yep.
Survey time. Go, Bob.
Okay, the survey, it's been blocked here. I can just say, had you seen the film before, multiple choice, and I can't read it because I have a meeting, a Chiron over it. So could you leave the,
Oh, well, it's just, have you seen the film before? Yes or no?
oh, yes or no? Okay.
And you can read the second question.
No, I can't. It's been blocked.
Okay, the second question is, did you enjoy the movie? Choices are, yes, I loved it. No, this wasn't for me. Third choice is, it was okay.
Okay, looks like we have 70% participation. That might be everyone except for the host, I think. So
You know,
I'm
I've
gonna
gotten to the
close it.
point where I can almost predict what some individuals are going to say. For example, I think I know what the Hershons are going to say about this, but I'll keep my mouth shut. We'll see how they vote.
All right, I'm gonna end the poll and share
And the poll.
results. And here we go.
And Bob, can you read it or not?
No, I can't. Because I got this
Okay.
slide
Have
in
you
front of
seen
me.
the film before? Oh, we're a hit already. 100% said no, they had never seen this movie.
Okay.
Did you enjoy the movie? Yes, I loved it. That was 62%, and 38% said it was okay. So we don't have any negatives, really. We have either kind of gently positive or loved it. Excellent. So we can close that up. Thank you, Leandra. I guess we'll start this way. It's a cult film, okay? No question about it, and that's why 100% of you had never seen it before. It was not a hit when it came out. And my usual definition of a cult film is this. I like to say a minority of people loved it, a majority of people just don't get it. And as usual, it's fine if you're not in the cult, but we want to start by hearing only from people who are in the cult. And that's the majority of you tonight. So we want to spend most of our time talking about what this movie has going for it. You're not allowed to talk critically about this movie yet. We'll give you the go ahead a little later, but we have to start by saying what you liked about it. Bob, you want to call on anybody?
Well, first I want to just think of a question to sort of get things going. Is this movie is pretty much just a romantic plot? You know, a young lady goes out to try to make her break and all that, and she learns a lesson by being taken advantage of, and her boyfriend that loved her all the time comes back. That's the story. Why did they decide to make this as a cartoon? Why couldn't this be live action? What is the advantage of making this film as a cartoon? Anybody?
Good question.
Anybody? Go on, somebody feel free. Go on, Arnold, go on.
I think you could say the same, you could make the same point about Lady and the Tramp. This is essentially Lady and the Tramp transposed to Paris. And you could make that same case. Why not animation? I think that they were able to do a lot of things with the movie that they could not do as effectively. The whole artists gallery that they had would not have come across as effectively. I think the artistic sets and the way they did the sets would not have come across as effectively. And I think a lot of the characters would not have come across very well if that had been done live action. This is not one of those movies that Disney could have taken Beauty and the Beast and then turned it into a live theatrical production. I think this is the opposite.
Okay, good thoughts. Anybody else? Go on.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was written by Chuck Jones.
Right.
Who's an animator.
Right.
So he's not going to be doing live action films. His entire career was dealing with animation. And you know, from my point of view, just because he's a brilliant cartoonist and a brilliant animator, this is just another showcase for him. And you know, this is an opportunity for him to strut his stuff. It was brilliant. Yeah.
That's a great term.
He was able
really
to get
applies.
he was able to get one of his best friends at Warner Brothers, Abe Leventhal, to actually direct it. He sort of gave him a break by giving him a chance to do this. What happened was both Abe and Leventhal and Chuck Jones were fired by Warner Brothers because they were not allowed to do a competitive network and studio. So they both got fired. But then a few months later, Warner Brothers decided to cut their animation completely, shut down their animation system. So it wasn't a big loss for either Abe or Chuck.
Yeah, I guess we could say, we should add that Warner Brothers was the distributor of this film,
Ended up
even
being-
though they didn't have anything to do with making
Right.
it. Right.
Yes, yes. Somebody else about?
Yeah,
have
before I
you-
finish, I actually worked on animated cartoon way back when. And
Really?
I know how incredibly difficult it is to do. And I mean, I was just dazzled by the brilliant artwork. And it just, it was a superb effort on his part. So it was
First
Warner
off,
Brothers' loss.
tell us what you worked on all those years ago. And then could you give us an example or two of what you think was brilliant about this animation?
Well, what I worked on, it's a long story, but I had a part-time job with the state of Ohio when I was in graduate school, and I had nothing to do. So I drew cartoons and I did my homework. And one day, the boss came to me and he said, we got $20,000 in the budget to make a movie on city planning. Take the money and make an animated cartoon.
Oh,
So I was a kid with $20,000. It turns out that Ohio State Cinema Department had brought in an animator as an artist in residence, a guy named Phil Stapp, who was spectacular. So, I was I got a credit as a co-author, and just had a wonderful time doing it. It just, learned so much. In the back of my mind, I thought, maybe I should make a career out of this, but I knew better. But anyway, one of the things that I loved about what Chuck Jones and company did, because a lot of people were involved in this, is the detail, the representation of all of the French artists of the era. Spectacular. He mimicked their work and did it in such a beautiful way. Plus the details, the rails, just as an example. He showed fish plates. I mean, goodness gracious. That's a real detail, and he got it. I mean, so many things like that throughout the film were just spectacular in my mind.
You said early on that, you learned how difficult animation is. Could you just explain just a bit about what makes animation so difficult?
Well, what the film that we did, in fact, I'll give a plug for it. You can find it on YouTube. The film is called "It's the Greatest Little City." You'll find it. My daughter just put it on YouTube a few weeks ago, actually. But so our technique was stop action. So it wasn't full cell animation. But just to give you an example, there was one scene. The first scene that we animated was showed a picture of a man dipping a paintbrush in a bucket of paint and going like this.
Oh.
That motion took a full 8 hours to animate.
Oh, geez.
And that was the simple one. And some of the other scenes were much more complicated. But anyway, it was just changed my life in a lot of interesting ways. So I hope you get a chance to take a look at it.
I'm curious to know, before you saw this film, was Chuck Jones a name that was known to you or a new name?
Oh, I knew of him. I mean, he was a star. Bugs Bunny and Porky Pig. I mean, you don't have to look very hard to know what a star Chuck Jones was.
Something that's
You
kind
want
of
to call in some other folks? I saw a hand up. Put it up again.
Go on, who wants to speak? Go on, Chris, Mr. Bartel, go on.
I thought that it was a mini art lesson which held the adults' attention. And I thought that was good. And plus, if you'd ever traveled to Paris, the way they described some of the main areas of Paris was interesting.
Yeah. How would you guys say this movie was different from typical Disney?
I can answer that, Bill, if nobody else can, but,
Well, let's give
let's
our
give other
friends
people
a chance to
yeah.
go first.
I could talk all day.
The style of animation is very different, for one thing. And if you think about it in terms of contemporaneous Disney musicals, in other words, from the 60s, which was Richard and whatever his brother's names,
Oh, the
music,
Sherman Brothers?
Sherman Brothers. I think the level of music is at a much higher level in this, and the quality of the lyrics is certainly better. We're not listening to Chim Chimmery here. It's
Well, yeah, I have a soft spot in my heart for Feed the Birds.
Go
but
on,
that's a
Laura.
whole
Laura.
other-
You were gonna say something? Laura?
Oh, am I on?
No, you're on.
Okay, when I think of Disney, I think of cute. Not all, but a lot of it focuses on something that's more warm and friendly, on the cuter side. But this one was not, with the exception of, oh, good grief, this is your brain going off. Our main character, who is beautiful and cute and sweet, most of the time. None of the other characters are cute, and some of them are downright deliberately kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So that was a major difference that I see.
Uh-huh. Where's your daughter tonight?
Yeah, when you think of Chuck Jones later, you know, Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote are sort of not cute. They're fun, they're interesting, but they're not cute.
Mm-hmm.
Go on, go, David.
Okay, cuteness versus non-cuteness. That's a big point.
Blanche, go on.
I can't imagine Disney letting human trafficking into the plot. They not only trafficked the young cat, the Judy Garland, I'm sorry, what was her name? I just
Mewsette.
Mewsette or
Mewsette,
Mewsette. They not only trafficked Mewsette, but they trafficked the others. They shanghaied them onto a boat. I mean, this was serious. And the art, of course,
Dazzling.
it was very Chuck Jones. I really expected Roadrunner to come running into the frame any second, except they don't have him in France. But
well, the cat's tail igniting.
well, yeah, the cat.
The mouser's tail igniting like a fuse was just a wonderful touch. But all of the artwork, how it differs from Disney is in the artwork,
Yeah.
because this is really as Howard said, this is a Chuck Jones showcase, and what a wonderful showcase it is.
So Bob, you want to just give us a little overview about UPA Studios?
Yes. It is a studio that started in 1941, a group of Disney employees. Disney, basically there was a strike with Disney because they were tired of the animators getting paid so poorly. So there was a strike. So this group decided to work for this company that was basically doing training films for World War II. And after the war, they decided, let's try to do some cartoons too. But at Disney, it's ultra realistic animation. Okay, that is how it was done. That was what Disney wanted, as close to real as possible. This group said, let's be more creative than that. Let's try to depict a reality, but let's be a creative reality with imagination. And so they did more than just the traditional animation. They also used a process called limited animation, where you, it's a technique where the animation, you use your frame a lot, and the character just changes, not as realistically. But that turned out to be very important for not only UPA survival. And a great example of that is Mr. Magoo's Christmas, or either Mr. Magoo. It was shot that way. It wasn't perfect, but it was efficiently financial ability to do that. And that was important because Hanna-Barbera, 2 Disney animators at one time, they got this idea too. If we can put cartoons on television at a lower budget, if we use the technique of limited animation, and that's what this movie uses a lot. And they're also, because of this fact that they're away from Disney, they were able to be as creative as some of you have talked about with this film. I mean, just incredible what they can do. There was no limits what they can do that way too. And that company, unfortunately, after this movie, which didn't do well, and another movie they produced, UPA went under. It was sold to one of the studios, and that was the end of their careers. But because they didn't know how to market, and of course, the big question with this movie is, who is your audience for this movie? You know, this is something that I think Bill mentioned also in his preview. Who is your audience for this film? Anybody got any ideas? Who are they aiming for to tell the story? Anybody?
Certainly not kids.
I'm sorry.
I don't think it was kids.
If it was kids,
There was an adult audience.
it didn't make it. It was an adult audience.
Anybody else? But it did have some kid-like things in it too, at times, you know, some of the slapstick stuff. It was sort of a hodgepodge of both, which I think was one of the reasons it didn't do well at the box office. I don't know, anybody else comments? Anybody? Yes, go on. Laura.
I think it would have been aimed at a more educated audience as well. Otherwise, there would not have been the appreciation that our group is going to be more educated. And if it didn't do very well in the public, maybe it was because they didn't recognize the kinds of backgrounds that were being used, the significance of some of what was going on, whether it was the Shanghaiing, that kind of thing. So again, that was more of a niche group.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been talking so much about the visual achievements of this film. So Bridget, I'm going to call on you because I just know you're going to have something to say about the visuals here all the way through this film.
Yeah, I do. And I have something to say about a couple of the other things too. Yeah, I agree with what everybody else said. It's absolutely an adult film, especially with the themes of feline trafficking, as Blanche mentioned before. And some of the other things that we see, the humor, the art, all that stuff. So I found the visuals to be stunning. And as was pointed out, it does sort of have in places that Mr. Magoo's Christmas vibe. So I absolutely got that, and it came to mind when I was watching it. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. But it was gorgeous to see. And there were a few of the artists that I recognized, like when they were at the Moulin Rouge. You know, it was very clearly Toulouse-Lautrec style they were imitating. I saw my favorite cafe scene by Van Gogh that they used. So yes, they absolutely used famous paintings, famous styles throughout the film, in addition to where they called them out. But there were some other really gorgeous things about, especially the background. Like there were moments where things were very abstract and just fabulous. And I appreciated that very much. So, and it varied, like sometimes they were abstract flowers, sometimes they were just abstract textures. So it was very creative. And what's interesting is that the artistic style changes from scene to scene, and even parts of scenes to parts of scenes sometimes. And it didn't bother me at all. So you would think that changing that kind of style, it would have created like a disjunct continuity for the viewer, but it didn't. It felt very freewheeling, and it was lovely.
Cool. Herb Drower, what did you take in? in this film.
But I'm afraid my main attraction to the film was hearing Judy Garland. She was in such fine fettle. Every time she did a song, I just couldn't help but think what a beautiful, beautiful gift she had. The rest of it in animation, I have never been a devotee of animated films. I watch them, some are good, some are bad. I'd rather see a live actor. But to hear the live voice of Judy Garland coming through a cartoon character didn't bother me one bit. She's always been my favorite. So I'm sorry to judge it just on the vocal quality, more on
okay.
the vocal quality than on the animation.
Well, let's expand.
Oh, I was a little surprised. Yip Harburg has always been such an innovative writer, and in this, I didn't think he came through as good as I normally expected from Yip Harburg.
Okay, fair enough. We should point out, I think I mentioned this in the intro, Harburg was a victim of the blacklist in Hollywood. He could work in New York. New York was much more tolerant, but he was prohibited from working in Hollywood at the time. He only entered the picture on this film when the blacklist was eliminated. And I'm sure glad that he had the chance. This may not be Harburg's best work, but it is sure darn good, one way or another. And as I said, whether you agree or not, I think there are two great songs in this. Paris is a Lonely Town and Little Drops of Rain, for me, are ranking songs. Blanche and Jack, I can't tell whether you agree or not.
I just say to, and Janice has a comment, but to Herb's point, I actually listened to the score before I watched the movie. And when I listened to it, I was very unimpressed with the lyrics. When I watched it in the context of the movie, the lyrics became far more powerful to me.
Good.
And I thought they were much more clever when I watched them with the movie than when I just listened to them as straight lyrics. I don't know why, but
So that's good. That's good film songwriting.
Yeah.
Would say, you know,
I just wanted to say that
they weren't written as pop songs. They were written and given a dramatic context.
I want to give a shout out. Nobody's mentioned Hermione Gingold was a favorite
Yeah.
of mine. And I liked the animation and I liked her voice, and I'm sorry her role in this whole grooming thing, but she was great.
We always love
Again,
them.
but then again, it's the theme of grooming. So
It's the theme of grooming.
she was a groomer.
Was she an active, was she a willing participant? I don't know.
Well, there you go.
I would point out that when Hermione Gingold was in Gigi, she was grooming Gigi as well. So-
Well, there you go.
Precisely.
You're just typecast, that's
Oh,
all.
precisely.
Yeah.
And you
yeah.
can even then think about her, Madame Arnfeld in Night
Little
Music.
Night Music.
And, yeah, there's lots of characters, but how perfect she was because she was just what, a few years later, Bill?
Well, this was made in '62. It was another 11 years before she got to A Little Night Music.
But Gigi was right after.
Oh, Gigi predated this film by 4 years.
Oh, before. Oh.
How about we talk a little bit about, Herb talked about the singing, particularly of Garland. How about the acting in terms of these voices? Hermione Gingold, yeah, we've mentioned. Who else?
Can I add something about that?
Why not?
Okay, so what I wanted to add, and actually your question is well timed, is that the fact that it's a cartoon makes the characters a little more even in weight. Because when Judy Garland appears on the screen, I don't know about for everybody else, but she dominates my attention. She really dominates my attention because she's so charismatic. I just can't look away from her. And like everybody else on the screen disappears. So by virtue of the fact that this was a cartoon and we couldn't actually see her giant engaging eyes and her expressions, we were able to see more equality in all of the characters and nobody drew focus.
More of an ensemble feeling is what you got, I guess.
Yeah, good, Bob. Yeah, I agree.
Do you think, we talked about this as adults, but do you think young people would enjoy this movie too? I mean, would you take your grandkids or a sibling to this, a friend, anybody? And think they'd enjoy this movie?
Yeah, I think kids would like it. I don't think they would get it. But I think that there's enough features about it, you know, like the tail fuse, you know, some of the other slapstick joke, you know, some of the other techniques that are used animation wise, even like the fact that the cats that are the evil henchmen, they don't have really any distinguishing features. Like they all look the same. They all sort of slink around like little snakes, you know, like those kinds of things would entertain kids.
What about the section where they're doing the art? You know, that's almost like 5-minute montage of.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I would absolutely show that to children. There are some marvelous children's books about those exact artists that you can get in the library, also at the Art Museum, that introduce kids. I would say anybody over 8. There's a lot of message about friendship, the way that the little cat stuck by Jaune Tom, even though Jaune Tom didn't really deserve it. I think kids would like it a lot, and the feline trafficking would go over their heads.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Blanche, but it's got to be over 8. Little grandchildren, boom. I mean,
no, absolutely over 8, but 8 isn't very old. Yeah.
Right, and I think the animation, because the animation is so varied, and like we said, it's a showcase. Some segments reminded me as forerunners of Sergeant Pepper.
Oh.
And of some of the animation that came later on in the 60s.
Wow, cool.
I mean, some of it was very much of the early 60s style, but there was some that, you know, kind of gave a glimpse of the future.
How about Robert Goulet? Fresh from stardom in Camelot. Harold Arlen was worried about Goulet in this movie because Goulet had that, you know, big sort of operetta kind of voice. And Arlen worried that he was going to take over the score in a way that would not help it. But I don't find that to be the case.
No.
How did you like Goulet's Jaune Tom?
Yeah. I have to add here that I had the privilege of seeing him on Broadway in Camelot right around this time period. A year or two before, I guess. I went with I lived upstate, so we could go to New York for the day and see a Broadway show with a drama club. And nobody knew who he was, but he was enchanting.
Your heart was throbbing. Is that right?
A very young heart, very young heart.
And I've got to say that he was Robert Goulet.
Mayor, go on.
He was kind of stereotypically Robert Goulet, almost that you could he was his own satirization of himself.
Yeah, that's what Harold Arlen was worried about.
Mrs. Mayor's been wanting to say something, Bill.
Oh, yeah, go.
You're going. You wanted to say something.
Oh, yeah, I do. I thought that, especially with Jaune Tom, the animation was so in sync with the acting, the expressions on his face in particular really picked up on the actor. Especially with Jaune Tom, I liked that. And I wanted to, actually, when my hand went up before, Bill, your 2 cats were over your shoulder, and I thought it was very appropriate that they were keeping this discussion. They cleared away. They were just over your shoulder before.
Well, and that's 2 out of the 3, we should say.
I thought maybe you invited them to.
No, they come and go. You know how cats are. So
As long as you got the-
it
or
could
just
be
the-
that Herb Drower is the only one who sort of remembers Red Buttons.
Yes, a
Or maybe
lot.
some of the rest of you do too. Why don't you comment on Red Buttons? Because he was a much beloved performer.
Well, he really had style. When he was on TV, he just did a wonderful, wonderful job. I really liked him. He was in one Broadway play, wasn't he? Where he had, did he have one, Bill? I can't remember.
I can't remember either. I didn't know he was.
We used to watch him on TV all the time.
All TV all the
But
time.
we're awful old. He's been dead for quite a while.
Quite a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But he made
He's a
an
real
impact
saint.
when he was alive, and that's important.
Yeah.
And none of us can do anything after we're dead, except
Died in 2006.
Don't you think? I mean, I remember Red Buttons a bit as a boomer.
Aaron Squat.
That he was perfectly cast in this. I mean, he was just Mr. Lovable,
yeah.
Robespierre.
Yeah.
By the way, he was on Broadway 5 times.
Oh, thank you.
Laurel, you
Anything
got
we would
something?
know, Arnold?
Probably you would know them, Bill, but the rest of us would not. Vicky, Winged Victory, Barefoot Boy with Cheek, Hold It, and Buttons on Broadway.
The only one I know is Barefoot Boy with Cheek, which was a flop. So
Lauren,
Okay,
you got something to say? Go on. Lauren, go on. Lauren, go on.
Yeah. Sticking up for Robespierre and for Jaune Tom. It was Jaune Tom who saved Robespierre a number of times. Remember all the scenes where he's carrying him along in his mouth?
Yeah.
But it was such a delight to hear Red Buttons again. And it just felt like the character was dead, right?
yeah. Yeah. How about Paul Frees? Was that a new name for you?
Yeah.
Who played the villain? And my own research indicated that he did hundreds of commercials. Was that voice familiar? Was the name familiar?
The voice was very familiar.
Yeah.
One thing, by the way, that made this movie unique, it was one of the first movies where they gave star billing to the people that just do the voices. You know, now that we pretty much did all the time, but most movies, you don't know who these voices are, but this actually gave them top
Yeah.
billing. That's
Yeah.
a very rare thing, if not one of the first movies ever, animated movies to do that.
Well, and I would think, Bob, that they did that in hopes that that would help at the box
Right,
office,
exactly, for those
which it did
adults.
not do.
Yeah, because kids don't, that doesn't mean anything for kids, but it would mean for adults, yeah.
So how about Paris is a Lonely Town? Is that not a wonderfully typical, magnificent Arlen bluesy tune? Nobody's going to take that? Well, I'll just tell you it is. Although, you know something I think that's interesting about that song, in some ways, the animation, well, I hate to use the word dominates, but the animation is so wonderfully abstract when she's singing that it just takes away a bit from the song itself. And you know what I found out today? You're going to want to do this. If you go on YouTube, you can find Garland and Goulet on a 1962 Jack Parr show. And Garland sings both Paris is a Lonely Town and Little Drops of Rain with a studio audience. You gotta go, you gotta see that. It's really fantastic. Before the movie came out. Designed to plug the movie.
I'd like to make a comment about the voices. You talk about all the different characters, but Mel Blanc also had a role as the narrator. And Mel Blanc was the epitome of cartoon voices in that
Oh,
era.
yes. Oh, yeah.
So yeah, he showed up a little bit, not much, just enough to give you the taste of his voice and his skill.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious whether anybody else noticed something in the score. There were two songs where there were allusions to other popular songs. One of them, I'll give you a hint, one of them actually predated the song that it's an allusion to. In other words, this came first and it was copied later.
Ah,
The Muffin
the-
Man.
Pardon?
I heard the Muffin Man.
Oh, well, it wasn't the Muffin Man, it was the Candy Man.
Oh, is it a Candy
Oh,
Man?
okay.
I'm getting my men bearing treats confused.
Right. It was the Money Man song and the Candy Man. That was one of the songs, but the other one actually has two allusions to it. It was Roses Red, Violets Blue
Oh,
song.
yeah.
And did anybody pick up what the two songs were that are alluded to in there?
You stumped me, Arnold.
Now, one of them is Everybody Loves a Lover, which was a big hit for Doris Day.
Oh, wow.
And the other one was All the World, it was the line from Old Folks at Home, All the World is Sad and Dreary.
Oh, well done. Well played.
See, when I was listening to it without watching the movie, I picked those things up and I said, I have to remember.
No, you would have picked it up, and in any case, well, that's how smart Harburg was. That's really wonderful. And what does that rhyme with? Roses red, violets blue. The rhyme isn't
Sugar is sweet, and so are you.
No, in the movie.
in the movie?
Oh, sorry.
Well, that's real esoteric. Sorry about that. I shouldn't have brought it up because I can't quote it, but it's wonderful Harburg. Who haven't we heard from here tonight? Oh, how about Nancy Snyder? What you doing, Nancy Snyder? How did you like this? No, is your
She's
audio not
muted.
on?
It's muted. She's muted.
She's muted.
Yeah.
But if she can hear us, Nancy, why don't you turn your audio on so we can hear you? No?
No.
Oh, well. Bob, your turn to ask a question.
Okay, I guess it would be, this film had lots of songs. Again, do you think there were too many songs? Because most animated films don't have that many.
I know.
So they really showcased that. Again, for the audience, was that good? Was it bad? What do you feel? And did it move the plot, or even though I know all songs move the plot pretty much in the show, but is it too much? Because usually most Disney movies usually have no more than 6 songs. Comments?
And Bob, before you get answers, just to ride on your coattails, in most of the Disney animated movies, there are fewer songs and the songs are very short. These are not, for the most part. That's why I said it sounded like a Broadway kind of score,
I felt like they moved the plot along and I don't think there were too many.
Okay, good.
I think the film itself could have been edited a bit, but I don't think there were too many songs.
I agree.
And Bill, I put it into the chat, but the lyric was roses red, violets blue. The rhyme is old, but love is new.
Wonderful. Oh yeah, there it is in the chat.
Okay.
Oh, well, Sylvia says the rural cat segment was too long. Yeah, okay. I got you. And Sylvia also says that some of the animation reminded her of Yellow Submarine. Wow, because this predates Yellow Submarine by, 8 years, something like that?
And again, this movie like that, they were both used the limited animation quality to it. So that it fits in for their very same style of animation, a lot of the scenes.
Bob, define again for my benefit, limited animation.
Well, this is where the character, there's less actual visual scenes, okay? And you have more characters speak and talk and move, but they don't move like they're human. They move just a little bit, and that's the limited animation. And that's why, because of Hanna-Barbera, because influence of this company, you know, it's based on a lot of words that come out in characters, but they're not lifelike. And we just accept that, because, you know, the Flintstones is the great example, or all those kind of programs. And Mr. Magoo, you know, he does not walk around like he's a human being. He's not animated like one, but he does have that voice, and the characterization of the animator seems to do the trick, because most people do not complain about that. You know, we pretty much grew up with this because it saves a lot of money. It's just limited. And that's the reason they did it, and it seemed to have no trouble working in a lot of films. Remember,
But
Disney
even though it
was
saved
realistic.
money, it took on its own life as a sort of style.
Right,
That
exactly.
was very forward thinking.
And if you look at South Park, if you've ever seen that,
Yeah.
they do that in just a few days, and that's the same style, just
Mhm.
limited animation. Yeah.
In the chat, I also see, there's a YouTube video of Judy singing Little Drops of Rain on her TV show when she had her own TV show, but that's fine. But I really want to push you to see her do it on the Jack Parr show, because it's very powerful. And that song is, you know, as we pointed out in the intro, it's such a simple little song, which, as Harold Arlen said, those are the hardest to write. And I think that they pulled it off. Wonderful song, though it never became popular. Nothing in this score ever became popular.
What I found so remarkable was that I did not recognize any of this music.
Right, no.
Even a little bit.
No, right.
As well as I kept thinking, well, maybe I saw this when it came out. I never saw it.
No.
Never heard it. I don't know why. The closest I got was seeing Robert Goulet on Broadway. And the other thing I want to point out was, because you couldn't see Judy Garland, someone was talking about that before. Sometimes I thought Liza was singing. I really heard Liza, and it pointed out how inherited her voice is.
Oh, yeah.
It gave me chills, because I knew it wasn't Liza, but I heard Liza.
Yeah. And just 3 years later, Liza won a Tony Award as Best Actress in a Musical in Flora the Red
Menace.
So they just almost overlapped completely. But yeah, you're right. You're right.
Go on.
Were you, well,
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, go.
I was gonna say, were you talking about Paris is a Lonely Town on the Jack Parr show?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, it's really good. I saw
It's
it.
very powerful, isn't it?
Mhm. But so is the other song. It's on Judy's Christmas show. It's on.
Oh, Little
YouTube.
Drops of Rain?
That was really
Neat. Okay, so Judy did her part to help promote these, but it didn't help. Oh, Herb, did you have a comment?
I'm sorry, no, I had a cough, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Maybe we're at the end of this segment. Oh, go.
Just two little comments. You know, one, you talk about limited animation. In the film that I worked on, we did an example of limited animation to show one of the characters speaking. He was always smoking a cigar, and instead of drawing lips, we just moved the cigar up and down. That's how that worked.
It's being very creative, yeah.
The other thing I wanted to note here is that I have Chuck Jones's autobiography. It's called Chuck-a-Muck. And so I was looking up what he had to say about
what did he have to
Purr-ee,
say?
and almost nothing. All it mentions is that in 1962, my wife and I wrote Gay Purr-ee. That's it. No other comment about it. Now, many other aspects of his life he devoted pages to. So I thought that was just kind of peculiar.
Yeah,
It wasn't in his filmography at
It
all.
wasn't even in the filmography.
jeez.
That kind of worries me because Bill, didn't you say it was his wife's idea?
Yeah, it
So
was.
it kind of worries me that he might have been, I'm going out on a limb here. Why not? We're among friends. He might have been unwilling to give her credit for this, or he
No,
was
that's not true.
that it sunk without a trace.
He was very supportive of his wife's
Was he?
contribution.
Good.
And his wife actually passed away before the book was written. And he
Oh.
had a very touching dedication to her.
Hmm.
So he really had a great deal of respect for what she was able to do.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Could you enlighten us? What else would she be known for?
I have no idea. I don't think much. I don't think she was really into this animation or whatever.
And Bill, maybe you put this in your introduction, but didn't Chuck Jones get into trouble for doing this film? Or
Yeah.
if you,
Yeah, he got
um,
fired. He got
wonder-
fired.
I
Just
wonder
using the
whether he
contract
didn't
with Warner Brothers.
put anything in his autobiography or his memoir, whatever this is, because just about anything he said might have been litigious. And could have-
Yeah, he totally broke their contract. He was exclusively Warner Brothers, and he did this movie anyhow, which he wasn't supposed to do.
Well, I have the feeling that we're finished, but boy, I just have to tell you, I'm really impressed that so many of you showed up for this film. I thought this would be a really small attendance. And B, I love it that almost all of you loved it. For me, it's always been a gem, but as we have found in this discussion, people don't know this film at all. So I think that's one of the reasons why we are here doing this, don't you?
Yep.
Anybody else before we move on to the diehards? Okay, then we're gonna do miscellany, and there are only 3 items. And Bob, you're up next,
Yes.
telling us what the next movie is.
Okay, our next one will be Walt Disney's Lady and the Tramp. Okay,
Oh,
on Thursday, September 7th. Okay, you'll see the difference in animation completely when you see that film. The style, definitely, among other things. Okay, so it's Thursday, September 7th, 7 o'clock, Lady and the Tramp.
And I'm going to urge you all to see the intro that I do, because there's a real surprise in it. And because it's a surprise, I'm not going to tell you, but it's going to be cool. So don't miss it. And Laurel, you have to get your daughter to see this. Oops, you're muted.
Town guests and just is a little overwhelmed with that.
Oh, okay. That's good reason. Okay, number 2, Barbara had to leave, so she's not going to do her usual eloquent pitch for fundraising, but I'm going to just make an observation, and Lynn will not be surprised to hear this. Lynn's one of our trustees. Some of you may have noticed that in the last 4 or 6 weeks, there have been 4 national stories about the perilous condition of the American nonprofit theater. And even though the Musical Theater Project is not technically a theater, we relate. There's a dotted line between us and nonprofit theater. And this is really quite alarming, as if there are not enough things going on in our society that are alarming. And I just jotted down a couple of phrases. I mean, there's been a big long story in American Theater Magazine. There was a big long story in the Washington Post. There have been 2 stories in the New York Times, one of them on the front page 2 weeks ago. Crisis in America's theaters. The word imploding has been used. American theater on the verge of collapse. And audience demand during the pandemic fell off a cliff, which is one of the problems, because after COVID, not that COVID is over. I think COVID is going to be with us forever. But after the worst of the pandemic, I think all of us in the arts felt that audiences were just going to come right back, and they didn't. And the statistic is nationally that 25 to 30% of the audience have not come back. So this really is a serious problem. And there are a lot of layers to it. We could spend a whole hour just talking about what is contributing to this so-called crisis in the nonprofit arts. But I just want to say to this group, because you're all sensitive and supportive, it is a crisis. And, you know, when you have a chance to read more about it, do so, and we'll all learn more about it together, and we'll be concerned about it together. I don't know where it's going to lead. Okay, and number 3, miscellany. You know, if I had an excuse, I would quote Yip Harburg every month. So I thought I would quote, as far as I know, Harburg and Arlen didn't write any songs for this movie that were cut. They were all used, but I'm not sure I'm correct about that. But I thought I would quote a lyric from a song they wrote together in 1937 for a now forgotten musical called Purr-ee for What? Which was an anti-war musical in 1937. This song is called Down with Love. The most famous recording is Bobby Short. Find him on YouTube singing this. You sons of Adam, you daughters of Eve, the time has come to take your love-torn hearts off your sleeve. Look, look about you, what do you see? Love sick, love lorn, love wrecked, love worn, boo-hoo humanity. There'll be no peace on earth until this curse is wiped off from this love-mad universe. Are we mice or men? Can't you see the light? Come, you fellow victims, let's unite. And here comes the chorus. Down with love, the flowers and rice and shoes. Down with love, the root of all midnight blues. Down with things that give you that well-known pain. Take that moon and wrap it in cellophane. Down with love, let's liquidate all its friends. Moon and June and roses and rainbows ends. Down with songs that moan about night and day. Down with love, yes, take it away, away. Away, take it away, give it back to the birds and the bees and the villainous. Down with eyes romantic and stupid, down with sighs, down with Cupid. Brother, let's stuff that dove, down with love. Isn't that great? And you will notice the word rainbows is in there, and this is the man who gave us the lyric for Over the Rainbow. Harburg uses rainbow imagery a lot. But it's also true that in all of his more than 500 songs, he only says, I love you twice. He just despised cliches, and we just don't find them in his lyrics. So rest in peace, Yip Harburg. We love you. And thank you, Blanche. I'm glad you do too. Okay, thanks everybody for showing up. And don't miss Lady and the Tramp. It'll be fun to juxtapose it with the movie you saw for this time around. And Bob, you want to say goodnight?
No, just good night, everybody, and look forward to seeing Lady and the Tramp next month. Okay.
And diehards, stay with us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.